Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another live guest interview within the Mindful Journey. Sorry for the little bit of a delay and the schedule change here. Our guest today, who has given me so much grace in articulating her name because I'm probably still doing a poor job, so please forgive me. But Xuan Zhao, she is here with us, was just delivering a pitch for her startup, which is based out in California. They're doing such wonderful work. I'm going to briefly go through her bio. Many of you likely read it in advance, but we'll dive into her work a little bit more throughout conversation. But she's joining us today from as a behavioral scientist, pardon me, from Stanford University. She's also the co-founder and CEO of Flourish Science, where they're much like Mindful Journey in many ways. And I think and hope that she and I will find ways to continue to collaborate beyond this topic of conversation today, but doing such meaningful work and striving to be a resource to help people in their not only their mental well-being, but their overall well-being. She's been quoted, and her research has been quoted virtually everywhere, from New York Times to Harvard Business Review, the Happiness Podcast, etc. Actually, some of you may recall her work in one of our weekly challenges, Ask for Help. I'd shared one of her articles that was encouraging people to be courageous, to ask and share why it is that we often don't ask, and how I believe Xuan was telling us that people actually want to help. So I want to dive into that today, but without sharing more of her bio, I want to get into conversation. So with all that being said, again, Xuan, thanks for being here. Again, pardon my misarticulation of your name, but looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the self-introduction. I'm very, very honored to be here and to share more with the audience on topics we are both so passionate about.
Yes, certainly. Could you give us a high-level overview of your work as a behavioral scientist within Stanford, and then what it is that you're doing with Flourish Science as well?
Totally. So I've been a social psychologist for the past more than a decade. My PhD is in social psychology. Specifically, I focused on, I got my PhD from Brown University. Specifically, I focused on perspective taking. So perspective taking is the idea that we all see the world from a different perspective. We all hear different things, see different things, but somehow we can get onto the same page sometimes. And when does that happen? Well, why? What really helps people to better take each other's perspective? So that was my dissertation topic. And I also, inspired by this research and also my training in acting and anthropology, I created a class at Brown on empathy and leadership, really how we can cultivate empathy in our own individual lives and also in our communities. So with that, I did my postdoctoral fellowship at University of Chicago Booth School of Business. So there we focus on connections, social connections, and why oftentimes we do not connect with each other. Like we have this tendency to sometimes notice nice things in another person, but don't give them a compliment, and why that's the case. Or we need some help and we don't reach out to other people for help. Why is that the case? We also have some research in collaboration with the Second City to understand how we can help people better talk about their differences, different life experiences, different political views, different, different opinions on public issues. So those are all the kind of research I did when I was a postdoc at Chicago Booth. And then I came to Stanford Spark. So Spark is what we call a do tank. Instead of a think tank, we actually partner with industry leaders and change makers to create and implement and assess changes based on behavioral science. So for example, I have research projects with Nextdoor, the social media company, to understand and to support volunteer moderators to better moderate race-related conversations on the platform. I also have collaboration with an investment firm to understand how um, investors can be biased with, kind of gender and race when making investment decisions and therefore leave money on the table. So those are the kind of research we've been doing at Spark.
Mhm.
And the reason why finally, I know I've been going through
No, no, it's
different life
great.
chapters. Finally with Flourish, you asked. So there has been a world of knowledge and research on how we can live better, more flourishing lives. And what we really want to do is what we call bringing the science into the world and bringing the world into our science. So Flourish really is trying to be this bridge to not only kind of create actionable insights for people, that small actions people can take in their daily life, but also really help us as scientists understand what kind of actions work the best for who. So really honing on this idea that everyone's different will help you find out what makes you happy and do more of that. So this
Mm,
kind of personalization is the reason, the motivation behind why we created Flourish, to share the knowledge with more people and help people find their personal fit. So that's a
mm.
quick overview of the life journey so far.
Amazing. And what is it? Is there anything that you can point to from your past that inspired you to enter into the world of behavioral science, psychology, just let's call it human behavior, to
Mhm.
kind of encompass it all? Was there anything from your upbringing, or what is the inspiration behind your passion for this work?
Totally. I've always loved, first of all, loved science. I find it so beautiful and so insightful. So I wanted to work on science. I was a pre-med when I was in college. I wanted, I guess I love science and I also love working with people. So I thought medicine would be the field for me. But then I took a psychology class and realized actually the human mind is even more fascinating than the
Mm,
human body.
mm,
There's so much more unknown about the human mind. So that's when I switched to a psychology major. And the reason why I study social psychology truly is about wanting to understand my social interaction with other people better,
mhm,
especially picking perspective taking as a dissertation topic. Because I'm the only child in my
mhm,
family, and I guess in a way, growing up being the focus, the center of my family's attention. So I really wasn't that good with perspective taking. I can't say I'm good even today, but I think I'm getting better. So, really want to understand how, like, what can help myself better connect with the other people. I think that could be a big motivation.
mhm,
And we are like, and then for specific research projects, like for example, giving compliments. The reason I often joke is because my boyfriend at that time wasn't giving me enough compliments, and I really want to demonstrate the point of, how important it is to give compliments. And
mm.
now we are happily married, and I would like to think that my research helped too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There now, I not to get too far off topic, but
Mhm.
and I forget the gentleman's name, but there was a researcher out there who identified the five love languages,
Yes.
and so does that tie into some of your work? Not necessarily those specific five languages, but from what I recall of it, I think words of affirmation is one of the
Yes.
love languages. Is that is that something that you have studied as well? Because relationships are very, very complex. I don't know the divorce rate is in America, I think is well over 50%, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But there might be a whole niche to really help just individual couples. And it sounds like it worked in your own relationship. Is that something that your research has supported as well?
Hmm. Um, yes, to some extent, although we don't specifically look at romantic relationships, we look at friends or family or romantic couples. It's more general about underestimating the positive impact of our compliments on other people.
Mhm.
So it's certainly related. Words of affirmation. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very important to me and to many people. Maybe it's like the degree of importance could vary, but everyone wants to be seen, be heard, be appreciated. That we know from research.
Agreed. I couldn't, sometimes, so many times, being redundant there, but oftentimes, I should say, uh, people will, put this front on, like saying, I don't need someone to tell me fluff, etc. But the harsh truth is all of us love to hear compliments. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, that's a nice shirt you're wearing," or "Those are nice shoes," or you know, "Your hair's nice today," whatever the case may be, it hits us. And I do think we need more of that in the world because we are, you know, so often got these walls up that disallow others from entering in. And as a result of that, I think people are fearful of entering in. And I'd like to pass that back off to you as to why don't people give compliments more often?
Yeah, so we find we often, there could be several reasons. One is we underestimate the positive impact of our words on other people. This is oftentimes because when we have some nice things to say to another person, we think about, am I saying it in the right way? Am I choosing the right phrases? Am I saying it
Hmm.
at the right moment? But for the recipient, it's the intention, the warmth that cares, that matters to them. And oftentimes this is, so for the compliment givers or potential compliment givers, they focus on the execution. But for the recipients, they focus on the intention, the warmth. So that can create this kind of underestimation, which, as you know, our behaviors are driven by our expectation on what will happen if we take certain action. So if we underestimate the power of our compliments, then we don't really say it. So what we have also tested in our study is we basically told people that, what, people tend to underestimate the positive impact of their compliments. And then we basically look at how many compliments people wrote after knowing that knowledge versus didn't know that knowledge. And we have also found that once people know that their words matter, they will try to be nicer to other people and to give compliments. Yeah, so I think that's a big reason behind this.
Hmm. Thanks for elaborating. That's great. Good to know. Good to have research behind it to
Mhm.
support it, that
Yeah,
our
and
words matter.
our words matter. And what's really, I guess, crazy about the studies we've done is on average, these people have known each other for 10 years. So it's
Mm,
not really like stranger giving another stranger a compliment. It's
hmm.
some of the compliments are very deep, like
Hmm.
you bring the best out of people,
Mm,
you are this great role model that our children look up to, these
mhm.
kind of things. And I don't know, like sometimes people think about it, but we don't really say it because it feels like, ugh, maybe it's kind of awkward to say it, but it
Yeah.
really means a lot.
Wow. Wow, it's super inspiring. Hopefully those who are listening now and then those who listen later will feel encouraged and inspired to share more positive words because I often the old um some may view it as a cliche question, but it's been asked millions of times of, if life were to conclude today,
Mhm.
what would you be doing with your time? And I know that can be a difficult question to answer because obviously most people aren't faced with that reality. Some are who are in, critical care, et cetera. But
Mhm.
I do think that too often we underestimate um, not only our words, as you're saying, but the time that we have with people. We never really know, and so what would be nice to do is for people to spend more time giving these compliments with the recognition that we never know when our time is up. So why don't you say what's on your heart now and chest now, and eliminate the fear that might be associated with the embarrassment or whatever you perceive the recipient will get. So I
Yeah.
love that you're because you've got me thinking now. Who haven't I said things to that I need to say things to?
Oh, wow, that's
So,
powerful. And I actually have a story kind of like that.
yeah, please. I'd love to hear.
When you run studies, you don't run into this kind of events. Never, almost never. But okay, so we had, I described the first line of research on giving compliments, and then I gave some lectures, talks, and people ask, what if I give too many compliments? Would that kind of like an inflation of compliments? Would that be a problem? Would that devalue my compliments because value comes from rarity? And we thought
Mm,
that's not true because just like eating and drinking, feeling that you're appreciated by the other person is something that people have kind of like if not daily, then a very regular kind of need. Even today, like when my husband gives me a compliment, I'm just so happy, like, like I've never heard it before. I don't know. It's like, it's not just about the information, it's about the relation. There are two dimensions to communication. Information is just one. The other one is I care about you and I see you. So anyway,
Mhm,
so we had this idea that people might underestimate the power of repeated, like giving compliments like on a regular basis. So we created this paradigm called what we call compliment calendar. So the
mhm,
study was we asked one person, we went to a cafe shop, friends are hanging out together. So we asked one person to write down 5 compliments they could give
mhm,
to another person. And then over the next few days, each day we give one of those compliments to the recipient. We asked them how they felt after each compliment. And as you can imagine, people felt really happy after each compliment.
mhm.
So it's not like a declining, it's like, oh, I'm so tired of getting compliments.
Yeah.
So that was the finding. But then there was something weird happening when we were running the study. That on the second day, after every day people received the compliment and they reported how they were feeling, and we have a short box, like a small text box for them to give any feedback or comments. And then I read someone saying that, oh, I'm praying for my friend. She got into she's in the hospital right now. And then a few days later on Saturday, so after 5 days, Saturday, we have a big survey to ask them to reflect on the experience. And the same participant said something that, oh, I don't know if I'm qualified to be in your study because my friend had passed away during the past week.
Mm,
And that does not happen when you do research. It's like
mm.
it's I was so shocked. And then she said something about thank you for giving me an opportunity to hear from her even after she has passed. So it turns
Wow.
out that the friend got into a traffic accident on Tuesday, and then she passed away in the hospital after 2 days. So yeah, like what you said, I think I don't want to take things into this really heavy, direction, but literally what you just said happened in our study. She was
Wow.
very happy that the friend left 5 compliments and she kept hearing from her friend. And she said
Uh,
compliments she would always treasure.
wow, that is so, so powerful. Thank you for sharing. And no, please don't, no need to be sorry. That's what these conversations are meant for within Mindful Journey. We're trying to humanize the tough things that may often be neglected and just bring to the forefront what it is that we all have in common. And thank you for sharing such a beautiful story. And I'm sure that was personally gratifying for you. I know sometimes in midst of doing research and burning the midnight oil, it can feel tiring and exhausting. So getting that nice reminder of how your work is contributing and adding value is probably refreshing for you too. Um, I'd love to talk a little bit more. I know most of this conversation will probably be about behavior in some aspect, but I've
Mhm,
always been personally curious, why we see people in our world who can grow up in the worst of environments
mhm,
turn out to create massive success in their life. And let's call success as society standards as personal fulfillment. Doesn't necessarily mean that they need to have built some amazing company or rose to the ranks of CEO, et cetera. But there are people who grow up in abusive homes and alcohol and drug infested environments and low income families, yet they go on and create this success in their life. Where, on the contrary, people who grow up in arrangements where they have all the privilege in the world that you might expect, that maybe their families are multimillionaires, et cetera, yet you see them go down a path that is negative and perhaps filled with toxicity. And I'm just curious, from your research, from your vantage point, what is it that really makes us do what we do? Why do we do what we do?
wow, that's a big, big question that certainly goes beyond my own research. I think this is the fundamental question about nature versus nurture that psychologists, we at this point, I think everyone agrees that it's a combination of both. And it's perhaps even more nurture than nature. So, social psychology, the fundamental premise of social psychology is we are the product of our environment. for people who might have other resources, if they don't have good role models, or if they don't have the kind of nurturing environment, then that kind of resources might only, to the extent like lead them down a path where they feel entitled and they feel self-important. I can't really speak to that from my own research, but that's kind of the kind of insight I get from social psychology in general.
Okay, no, and thank you for being candid about it. I didn't presume you'd have a one canned answer, right? And quite frankly, I don't know that I've not seen any true research out there that supports that, right? I mean, I've had a number of psychiatrists on within Mindful Journey and have asked the question of, is mental illness something that we're destined for from birth, or is it something that happens later in life? And I've had varying answers from varying psychiatrists. And
Mhm.
so and then in another question I've asked, which maybe you might be
Yeah.
able to glean some insights on, is how do we get people to want to change? And there's been varying responses on that too. I think one of the psychiatrists said the old joke in their world is that, he said, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And he said, just one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So it's like, I guess I'm saying all this to say I don't know that there's a canned answer, but I would love to hear if we can maybe elaborate to your level of comfort on the question of, well, for those who are maybe going down a path, anyone listening today who might be engaged in some harmful behaviors, how do we reach that person in a way to want them to make them want to change? I know we can't force anything on anyone, but is there anything that you would recommend someone do if they're having a difficult time breaking a bad habit, getting out of an abusive relationship, getting out of an addictive tendency? Anything that you might share with them?
Um, I'm thinking. That's
Yeah.
a very, very, very important question. I, that again goes back to a really big question about whether people are born, good or evil. And I'm on the side where I think everyone wants to be good and
Mm,
wants to be respected, wants to feel affirmed. And oftentimes, from this perspective, social psychology, I think some of the destructive behaviors actually serve certain functions. For example, say it could be like really you don't feel that you are seen by other people, or you are getting the kind of support, so you may engage in those behaviors, and maybe not unconsciously, maybe unconsciously, to get the kind of attention that you want from other people.
mm,
um, or so those, I fundamentally believe that on some level our behaviors are rational, even if they are seemingly not ideal, suboptimal. So
mhm,
really go down the why that person is engaging that behavior. Is the environment supporting that person to flourish, to become a better person, instead of just judging that person or condemning that person for doing
mm,
what they are doing. I would have more empathy towards that person, truly listen and understand what's going on. And so that's my take on this.
mm. Yeah, no, that's great. And I hope I didn't frame the question in a way to make you or others misperceive, because I too, I believe we need more empathy in our world collectively, right? And we oftentimes will look to folks who are in a situation that society doesn't accept, and I personally don't view them as less than. It's like, what's the trigger, right? That maybe drove them to that. And I know homelessness is such a topic in many cities and larger cities, and in the local area where I am. I remember hearing a story about a gentleman who he literally chose to be homeless. He wanted to be. That was the path that he wanted. So if someone were to look at him from the outside, they may judge him and think that he's less than or inadequate, but he was purposeful about taking that course. So what you're saying resonates, because I do think we need more of a collective empathy, because not everyone is going to follow the traditional path. With that being said, what is empathy, and how do we get people to deploy empathy more often?
Mhm. Empathy is very different from sympathy. Sympathy is like feeling for, and empathy is feeling with. So really feeling what another person is feeling and seeing what that person is seeing. That's how we define empathy. So there are two components to this. One is the emotion, and the other one is cognitive, to feel what they feel and to see what they see. So the way to create more empathy, there are several different paths. I summarize them as four. So one is conversation, to really talk to them. We underestimate how useful conversations are. Like sometimes we try to guess what the other person is thinking. Honestly, if you can talk to that person, chances are they will actually tell you what motivates them. So I think conversation is really important. Another one is to experience what they experience. I have when I teach my class on empathy, I often use this case study where a designer really tried to design for older, more senior citizens, people who have or physical kind of their physical strength has declined, and she puts on this a gear that really kind of like weakens her body in a way, and then that she navigates the world to resonate with, to really understand the kind of struggles, the physical challenge of navigating around when your body is not as strong as it used to be. So those are actually experiencing what another person experienced. And another one is really kind of imagination, like reading novels, watching movies.
Hmm.
Those stories really kind of really helps us to better imagine what that person's experience is like. So those are different paths. I said four, and I'm blanking on the fourth one
That's
about
okay.
how to build empathy. So I think those are really, really good ways to help us better understand another person instead of just judging them. And for some people, understanding is the goal. And for some other people or some other contexts, behavior change, helping another person change their behavior is the goal, regardless of whether the goal is to change or to understand. I think empathy and understanding is always the starting point.
Yes. What does empathy do for an organization if leaders are able to, because I know you do some workshopping and teaching of this, if we have leaders who are on now or maybe on, listen to this on demand, why is it so important that they practice their ability to be more empathetic? What does it do internally within an organization when leaders are operating with more empathy?
Totally. I think especially nowadays with the new kind of like Gen Z, the younger folks, people care a lot more about being validated and seen as whole person or whole people. So I think one is to create this kind of culture of inclusion and respect that really helps to address some of the challenges, the changing workforce. That's where my mind immediately goes to, because
Sure.
according to some recent survey from American Psychological Association, APA, 84% of employees say that when they find their next job, well-being and the kind of work environment is something that they will factor in their decision.
Wow.
So that's really important, building empathy, building a more place where you can be authentic and human. It really is helping employees to improve their well-being. It's part of the experience,
Hmm.
employee experience. Another reason why I think managers want to work on their empathy is because, again, we often underestimate the impact of our words and behaviors on other people. And as the CEO and the leader of the team, I feel even with the knowledge from research, I often fall into this trap. Like oftentimes I do not appreciate how much impact my kind of seemingly constructive criticism could have on my teammates, or
Hmm.
or how me showing up like short-tempered or stressed, how that
Hmm.
creates stress in my team and really stops people from being creative and engaged. So those are all these kind of blind spots I find myself still subject to from
Yes.
time to time. And I think that's why we need to build more empathy to truly understand how we impact other people and truly to create good teamwork and a good team outcome.
Yeah. Is empathy like a muscle, like a physical thing that we can practice? Is there anything that we can do? Like if I'm wanting to gain better stamina and cardiovascular strength, I can go for a run or run on the elliptical, treadmill. Of course, if I want to gain muscle mass, go to the gym. Can we build empathy the same way?
Oh, absolutely. People say it's kind of like a muscle. It's also kind of like learning instrument. It's never too late. You might be 60 or 70 and you want to learn how to play the piano. It's never too late. It's
Mm-hmm.
possible that some people have, a talent for music and other people might need some time. But same idea for empathy. Maybe some people are more empathic because of, I don't know, their early childhood experience. But some people like me might be more like, do not have the kind of benefit of having siblings and have to negotiate with other siblings.
Yeah.
But it's something we can always learn. And we really believe, Carol Dweck, she has this wonderful work on growth mindset. It's not
Yes.
just empathy. Lots of things we can learn. We hold this growth mindset. And
Yes.
for example, empathy, like going back to what I mentioned, having conversations, open-ended conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, open conversations or reading books or watching movies, all of these, or experience something from a different person's perspective, all of these can really strengthen our empathy muscle.
Yes. Oh, I love that you brought up Dweck's work, growth mindset. And just to elaborate on that for those who may not be familiar with her, the other mindset she speaks to is fixed mindset, right? Of just having this, I can't ever learn, this, I'm done, this is where it is. So thanks for sharing that. Then the open-ended conversations, would you mind elaborating a little bit? Because I think it's so important, and I don't want folks to miss that, because many times we feel like we're giving others a voice, but it's like if somebody asks your opinion, you're the first to speak, because we think being the first to speak makes us look the most competent, the most assertive, the best, etc. But giving other people a voice innately requires you to not frame a question for them, but to ask, an open, much of what I haven't done in this interview is give open-ended questions in much context. And that's by design, because I'm wanting us to flow a certain way. But in most situations, open-ended questions are so important because it gives the other person a voice. Would you mind elaborating on that?
Totally. So the power of listening, power of conversations, it really helps you better understand another person and also make the other person feel heard, which is so important when you are leading a team. We have also done some research on how you can make that kind of conversation go better, especially when there could be heated different opinions. So one thing we teach folks is what we call, this is what we developed with the second city. So inspired by the yes and approach in improv, we have developed this thank you because approach to discussing heated conversations. Basically, we teach people that when you hear something that could be triggering or could be you might disagree on, you first say something like thank you because. The idea is that there must be some value that you can thank the other person for example, for being honest or sharing their perspective that you haven't thought about, or just their willingness to be open. So instead of quickly shutting the conversation down, especially when you hear something that you don't like, do take a moment to appreciate what could be useful in what they are bringing to the table. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we also recognize that at least in our research, that oftentimes we have some shared foundation, something that we do agree on. Maybe we take different
Mm.
approaches, but that we share the same goal. And the thank you because exercise really helps people to take a moment to acknowledge that maybe we have 60% in common and we disagree on 30%. So really affirm that we do have 60% in common, and this is only this, like the 30% that's that differs, and we it, acknowledging, take a moment to acknowledge that 70%, usually it's actually 90%. That really helps to make the conversation go better and make the other person feel heard and willing to open up and continue to engage.
Amazing advice. I love that. I saw there was a question that came in from a guest, and I was able
Mhm.
to piece it together a little bit. So let me read it to you, and it should come up on your screen here. Um, okay, so the question says, what you said about people underestimating the power of their compliments is so
Mhm.
powerful. How can an individual encourage their surroundings to compliment them more?
That's an excellent question, and I actually have some pictures to share. So it turns out that yesterday was the World Kindness Day.
Nice idea.
We we did a campaign with Stanford Office of Development. So we created this flourish station. We went to their
Nice.
office and set up 4 flourish stations in their kitchen area. And for these flourish stations, we have, we have a poster, Happy World Kindness Day. We have these compliment cards that we created and the meaningful conversation cards to really encourage people to be curious, to bring the conversation to the next level. So that's kind of, there is so much research on how people infer the culture of a space from physical objects. And this
Mm,
is our way to really help people think about to recognize the importance. It's kind of like a social norm. It's like the organization endorse this flourish station. It's the culture we are
mhm,
building here. So we have pictures, different stations in different
mhm.
offices. They have, like 2
Oh, I
campus.
love this.
Yeah, so that's what we are building, really convey this message in the physical environment. And another reason why we chose this format is because there's research on how physical objects actually remind people and motivate people even more than digital reminders, because physical
Mm,
of objects, it stays there. You
mhm,
see it, and we even put these compliment cards. You can see that on these kind of heart-shaped stands, so you can actually
mhm.
like it can stand up and you keep looking at it, and if you get a compliment from another person, and you keep remembering this experience, and and by experiencing this yourself, we hope that you can also bring this kind of positive actions to more people. So yeah, that's just one of the small examples of how we create a what we would like to think as a flourish movement in our
Yeah,
organization.
that's wonderful, and what a great idea. Going back to the question, and I think that would be a beautiful thing to embed within an organization. If a leader's unwilling to adopt something like that, how might a team member within be able to get their leaders? Because I don't know if you've been exposed to leaders in the past. I certainly have many friends who have been, where they work for people who are just, maybe arrogant and unwilling to let anyone else's voice in. And as a result of that, there's toxicity in the culture. So, how might an employee who's working in a culture where they don't have a say, to like kind of force their leaders to bring more kindness? Is there anything that you would recommend for them to get more compliments internally?
Well, it's really hard to do it if the leader doesn't have buy-in.
Yeah.
But I think in our experience, we have also worked with employee resource group. So we are the outsiders. We can say things that employees are afraid to say, so
Yeah.
that's, and I suppose you too,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
being the
Yes.
outsider, you have the credibility from research, and I feel maybe the leader would be a bit more open-minded when we say something like, you should create more culture of appreciation here.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I think for employees, if the employers do not change or do not listen, it's really hard. It makes it really hard. I mean, people can vote by leaving, that's
Sure. Sure.
like a retention. And we all know, like or sick days and retention, those are all oftentimes reflect kind of a reflection of how people, how engaged people feel. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, great. Okay, very good. Well, I want to be sensitive to our time, and I do want to maybe ask just maybe 2 or 3 questions if it still works for you, because
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you on the front end, one of the questions that remains consistent with every guest is forthcoming, and I intend for this because I want people on the outside listening in to recognize that we all face life, right? All of us have challenges, and there are peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows, trials and tribulations. No matter even someone like yourself, who people may look to and say, working at an Ivy League institution, well educated, got a startup, etc. And as I've mentioned to you in the past, Xuan, have had past CEOs of Charles Schwab, etc., folks who have been vulnerable. So all of that being said, this forthcoming question is to your level of comfort, of course, but I think
Right.
our world today so often looks to everyone else and thinks that they have the perfect life. And what I'm trying to do is, through this question, allow people to not only have coping mechanisms to get through what they're going through, but secondarily to see themselves as human and recognize that it's okay to not be okay if they're facing something. So with that being said, what is the most challenging thing you've gone through in your life, and what do you recall having done to get through it?
Thank you for asking, first of all. I appreciate the curiosity and the opportunity to be vulnerable. In retrospect, I feel everything, like when you are in the middle of a crisis or in a kind of struggle, you feel it looms really large. But looking back, I can't even say like this is a kind of a really big struggle. I feel like everything worked out at the end, and somehow I feel they kind of don't seem as big of a deal nowadays. I'll give one example, I guess. I Now that's not even a big deal. It's funny. I think when I was in college, in my last year in college, I really felt lost and lost a sense of meaning and purpose. So I decided to go on this program called Semester at Sea. So it travels around the world. You get to see different people, how they live their lives. And my parents were opposed to it, and I need to raise enough money for myself to go. So I really wrote a lot of letters to my parents to convince them why this is a useful experience for myself, and also wrote a lot of letters to different people, like to do some fundraising and to the program, and they ended up getting enough funding to go. I feel like that was a watershed. What is it? Is that watershed moment of my life? Or
Mm-hmm.
before that, I feel I had to really do good coursework on this set trajectory, really get good GPA, getting into a good program. But after that, I felt freed. I've liberated. I feel like I've proven myself already, and traveling around the world is really many people's dream, and I kind of did that. So from then on, everything I do is just what I'm interested in. I don't have to prove to the world that I'm someone of worth anymore.
Mm, mm,
I think that I don't think that's a perfect answer to your question, but to me, that was a moment when I feel liberated, and
mm.
it was life changing in that sense.
That,
Well, I don't know if that's helpful, but I'll just give another kind of like a moment to share, to
yeah,
be
please.
scared of being vulnerable. I think what I'm going through right now, building a startup, and oh, by the way, this is my last week at Stanford because I've decided, yeah, I know, I have a perfectly good job at Stanford and it's research scientist, very well respected. And chances are you invite me because I'm at Stanford. And, like last week I was giving a talk at the National Academy of Sciences. Chances are it's because of Stanford. But I'm quitting my full-time job so that I can work on Flourish and give this all the attention that it deserves. I think it's a crazy decision, and I still don't know if I'm making the right decision. Yeah, many people try so, I mean, myself included, try so hard to earn what I have today, and I let it go so that I can open up more room to work on what I'm passionate about and making
Mm.
change and bringing science into a product and impacting communities all around the country. Yeah, I've stayed up much more this year than when I was in college. I've never
Yeah.
stayed up so much in my life because I just couldn't balance, working full time as a research scientist and building your startup. So that's why I decided that you really have to pick one, and I'll do this crazy thing. And you only live once, and the chances
Yes.
are, if I miss this one, I may never be brave enough to actually try it again. So
Mm,
I hope that's
wow. It's
that's
super powerful. Yeah, there, first of all, there is no perfect answer. So grateful for what it is that you have shared. It's always to the guest level of comfort. And what you said certainly resonates with me in both answers that you provided. And I'm super excited for you in taking Flourish Science full time. I think it's 100% the right answer. You know, spoken
yeah.
from someone who has quit multiple jobs in the past to pursue what it is I'm passionate about. So I'm grateful for your courage because I know Flourish Science is going to make a great difference in the world. And I also know the stressors that come with it, both leading up to and then once you're in it full time.
Yep.
But there's no doubt that the passion will supersede any of the uncertainty and doubts that inevitably come. So
Thank you.
excited for you, and I'm glad that
Thank
we connected prior to your departure because I
you.
think our time will be able to
Yes.
continue to go to collaborate.
Totally.
But
Yep.
so it looks like another comment
Yeah.
came through before before I read that. Would love to or unless you want, it looks like it said you would go into answer it live. Do you want to comment on that?
I just want to thank
Yeah.
this who was the name Hind for your words of wisdom. I absolutely agree with you. I think sometimes there is no best decision in our life. Whether we just have to make one decision. It's like 51 versus 49%. Um, what we have to do is just to pick one and make that the best decision. I think it's the same for, for this kind of career change. It's the same for marriage, finding, I don't think there is, I don't think there's only one Mr. Right. That's like finding someone, a career opportunity, a person, that's workable, and then make that the best decision in your life. I believe that. So that's why guess it's brave enough to do this. I believe I
Yes.
will make it the best decision I've ever made.
Yes, yes, yes. What is your message today for someone who may feel like they're at their wits' end? Someone who's hearing this from you, they're maybe seeing your bravery, feeling it, the passion that you have for your work and startup, yet perhaps in their own life feeling like they're in a moment of crisis or in a time where they just feel like they can't get out of bed in some moments. What's your message to that person who may be listening in today?
I would recommend this activity that we highlight in our Flourish app. It's called Letter from Future Self. So the
Mhm.
gist of this activity is there is a lot of wisdom and strengths within you, and you just need to listen to yourself. So my answer to your question is I don't think my wisdom or my words matter as much because people already know things and they need to listen to themselves.
Mhm.
So people might wonder how to do this activity. Basically, you just imagine that whatever challenge or struggle you're going through is over, and take that person's perspective. Imagine what that life looks like, and write a short letter to yourself today. What are the
Mhm.
wisdom, the words that you need to hear today from that person? And you will discover there's a lot of wisdom, the strengths already within you. So yeah, that would be an actionable item I would assign to someone
Yeah.
who's, trying to go through a rough patch in their life.
That's a powerful one. It may be one that I think would be useful for a weekly challenge, and we'll give you credit, of course, and tag Flourish Science with it too. But I really like that. I think it's a great activity, and I've heard that before, and if phrased in a different way, non-relative to challenges. But I think as it relates to challenges, particularly seeing yourself outside of them can give you the coping mechanisms and strategies to ultimately get beyond them. So really, really love the activity. Looks like one more comment had come through. And it says, Adam, we need to have a part two to this. I love everything I learned today. So we hopefully we will be able to have a part two to this. And if Xuan's willing to join us, if I can get her name, I practice your name after the fact, and I still have been unable um, to
Yeah.
master it, but I appreciate your grace that you've given me.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to learn. That matters much more than, having the right pronunciation. I think many people with foreign names would appreciate that your intention matters more. And I also have if we have time, I also have a story about my English name versus my Chinese name. I used to have English names, and when I
Yeah,
say names, I actually mean like plural form. I started with
yeah.
Betty, and then had Sarah, and then Tracy, and Sophie, and couldn't find the right English name until someone told me that, why was your Chinese? I was on semester C, the trip that went around the world. He said, what's your name? I'm Sarah. Like, no, what's your real name? My real name is Xuan. And he said, look, we are all here to learn something, and your name can teach us something about Chinese language. So I was like, wow, if that person says so, maybe, yeah, I do have something to offer, even with my name. So
Yes.
yeah, I stopped being Sarah, Tracy, or Sophie. Charlotte. I haven't thought about so long and hard about what English name I wanted.
That's amazing. So cool to think about that you just were able to pick these different names. I had a friend of mine I went to college with. His name is Aldo. He's never even told me his real name. And it was something complex, and he just goes by Aldo. And his last name is Yong, Yong. And I don't even know. He definitely remembers his original birth name, but he's gone by Aldo forever because he's been in America, I think, since he's 4. So,
Mhm.
anyways, it's funny you shared that because I'm sure you're not the first, someone from a foreign country coming here taking on an American name. And how funny it is to pick the most American names that there are: a Sarah, a Tracy. So amazing. Well, I will pause there. Thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation today. I appreciate you joining me for this personally, and we'll connect with you offline to share with you the recording and so forth. And I'm even more excited that you have made the decision to go off on your own full time, and I'm eager to see where that journey takes you. And I hope our paths will cross in person sometime very soon.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Hind, for being so supportive. I really love your compliments meant a lot to me.
I didn't see Starbucks name is Sandra. Yeah, amazing,
Thank you.
amazing.
Wonderful. So I hope everyone have a good rest of your day, and
Thank you.
would love to be back at some point.
Yes, indeed. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great day, Swan. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.